You're listening to the Full Court Press with your host, Drew Duncan. Don't you dare touch that dial. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Full Court Press. I'm your host, Drew Duncan. Don't forget, you can always follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at Drew Duncan 83. Jacksonville, Pittsburgh. You know, when I started thinking about this game, and I thought about it all last night after I saw the game, and I was wondering, you know, how would I personally look at this game? Because, you know, one of the things that I've been talking about with people a lot is the numbers. It's all subjective. And you start looking at the game itself, and I try to look at it objectively. And I got to admit, I think today I'm going to look at this one probably subjectively. And when I say that, it's because I just feel like regardless of whatever Pittsburgh did, it didn't matter. Ben Roethlisberger set a record for passing yards in a playoff game. We broke Bernie Kosar's record. That just did not matter. Every time they would score, it seemed like the points were meaningless, and they were unable to, in big situations, come up big. They kept it close. Yeah, okay. You know, I'll give you that. They never gave up at the end of that game. You know, all right. You know, I'll give you that. But I felt like the Jacksonville Jaguars essentially did everything that they needed to do in order to win that game. And even when it was close, you know, it went from 21-0 to 20-14 at half. Then it was 28-21. Then it was eventually 35-21, 35-28. 42-28, 42-30. You know, the point is regardless of whatever Pittsburgh did, Jacksonville was very good at staying on top, because at that point they weren't throwing counter punches. It was Pittsburgh who was trying to throw desperate, heavy hitting blows, and they were unable to get the job done. You know, I compare this game to boxing because it's what it feels like, right? It's kind of like watching an old Mike Tyson fight or an Ali fight or maybe even a Mayweather fight in, you know, or McGregor in the octagon, whatever you want to call it. And you look at it and you go, wow, that other guy's just trying so hard, but he's just not going to be able to get it done today. And that's exactly what I felt like when I was watching this game between Jacksonville and Pittsburgh. I felt like Pittsburgh was trying so hard. They were giving it everything that they had, but they just didn't have enough to be able to defeat the Jacksonville Jaguars. Look, Jacksonville gets up 21-0 to start the football game. They created turnovers early. They put themselves in good field position. A lot of great play calling throughout the game. Kept the plan simple for Blake Bortles. Leonard Fournette was effective. They were just really good at mixing up who the primary targets were, putting guys in good situations to make plays. Jacksonville not only outplayed, but I think outcoached Pittsburgh in this football game. When I say that everything that Pittsburgh didn't matter, 21-0 to 21-7, does that matter? They get some points at the end of the half. They try to, you know, give themselves some momentum. They're able to get a stop. Then they're able to get in the end zone, and then it's 28-21. But then what happens? Another turnover, another quick touchdown by the Jacksonville Jaguars ensued. Everything that they did, it was like 2 steps forward for 4 steps back. You have to give the Jacksonville Jaguars credit. Defensively, they forced a lot of issues. But think about the opportunities that Pittsburgh had in that football game. You get a half-block punt, you're in really good field position, and then you turn the football over. It took spectacular plays to even keep them close in that game. You know, Roethlisberger in that game showed off his arm. He showed that he still has the cannon. He showed that he still has the accuracy. Antonio Brown and Bryant and some of these other guys, Bell, made great catches in the end zone, showed that they're all phenomenal players, that they're capable of making the big play. But that's what I mean. They threw those big power punches, basically trying to go for a knockout. And unfortunately for them, it just didn't work. And Jacksonville was not intimidated going into this game. There were a lot of people that were talking about, well, that win was at the beginning of the year, you know, and this is a different Pittsburgh team now. And was it really a different Pittsburgh team then from now? That's the thing that I'm looking at. I think it was the same Pittsburgh Steelers and it was the same Jacksonville Jaguars, and it just didn't matter. Is Jacksonville a great football team? No, but they were great on this day. And on this day, that's what really mattered. 2 wins over the Pittsburgh Steelers in one season is not easy to do. You know, I reported earlier in the year on the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I made fun of Malik Jackson and the Jacksonville Jaguars because Malik Jackson predicted that they would go to a Super Bowl. You know, my train of thought was I didn't like their schedule. I thought they had a tough schedule playing Pittsburgh, Seattle, a couple of other football teams that I thought, you know, you're kind of thinking a little crazy here. Looking at their schedule, I didn't know that Jacksonville would win 7 games this season, to be honest with you. They were having fights in preseason. They, you know, guys were getting hurt. They were having issues with guys, you know, not hustling. There were off the field issues with guys getting arrested. And I just thought, how could this mess turn into what we're seeing right now for the Jaguars? And now when I look at Jacksonville, I think about that Baltimore Ravens football team a couple of years ago that made a Super Bowl run, beat New England on the way to a title, beat Denver on the way to a title, on the road, by the way, and ended up beating the 49ers in the Super Bowl. Very similar. They're starting to look that way. Nobody really, you know, was looking at Joe Flacco. Well, nobody's really looking at Blake Bortles. Now, Bortles is not playing on that level. That would be the one difference. But defensively, they're playing essentially the same football. With the running game, they're playing essentially the same football. Blake Bortles is surprising people the same way that Joe Flacco was surprising people. So now you have to start looking at it and go, maybe they've got a chance. Look, 2 of the best defenses on the NFL are going to be playing in championship games this weekend. You go back to Super Bowl 50, you think about the 85 Bears, you think about some of the other teams in the history of the NFL that have had so-so offenses, but great defenses that have been able to go all the way. That's a big part of it. And the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, between Miles Jack, the fumble return for a touchdown, the interceptions that put them in good position to be able to hang on to the lead, the way that they played on the outside. Yeah, sure, they gave up a lot of points, but like I said, it all was just really big plays. But then the defense for Pittsburgh wasn't able to do anything alternately in order to make sure that their team stayed in the game. It really reminded me of that Denver Broncos, Baltimore Ravens game from that season. Of course, the antithesis of that is you could look at it and say Baltimore was down, 21-0 at halftime in that game, and they ended up coming back to win it in overtime. Then you think of the way that they played New England. Then you think of the way that they dominated the San Francisco 49ers in the first half of that Super Bowl until the lights went out. Then Frisco made a comeback. So now you start looking at this team and the similarities are all there. We're going to obviously dissect Jacksonville and New England as this goes on. I said that I didn't think that Jacksonville could beat New England. I think I'm still probably going to end up holding true to that. But what they're doing right now is enough to win games. And when I say enough, that's probably not the right descriptive word to accurately assimilate to everybody just exactly how good a football the Jacksonville Jaguars are playing right now. And I guess that's why I equate them to that Baltimore Ravens Super Bowl team, because even if they don't make it, they've damn sure got a lot farther than I think all of us thought they would. You know, when I reported on Jacksonville earlier in the year, they had actually started out in the summertime with an 80-1 odd. By the time I reported on it, when the preseason was right around the corner, they were at an astounding 90-1 odds to go to a Super Bowl. What do you think their odds are now against the New England Patriots? I think the odds makers in Vegas may be worried because if anybody took a bet for Jacksonville and they go to a Super Bowl, man, you might clean up, bro. What is the bottom line here to this game? Everything that Pittsburgh did didn't matter, and they never really seemed like they were in the game, regardless of how close the score got. Because what would happen, right? You would sit there and you would watch the game when it got a little bit closer, and then something would happen. Jacksonville would create separation again in the game, and you would go, it's over. And then Pittsburgh would make it close again, and then you go, okay, well, now it's over. It's hard to come back from 21-0 to win football games, guys. You know, Pittsburgh just took a little too long to show up in this game. It was almost like they didn't show up until the third or fourth round of the fight, and then they won a bunch of rounds, and then they expected to be able to just win the rest of the way, thinking, I'm the big dog here, I'm the champion here technically, and you're going to have to figure out a way to beat me. Well, they did. They got lackadaisical. People are talking about whether or not Pittsburgh got caught looking forward next week to New England. Not by a long shot. I don't think so. Because a big topic of discussion was the first game between Jacksonville and Pittsburgh, and I don't think it's something that Pittsburgh forgot about at all. And on numerous occasions, we heard Ben Roethlisberger talk about the defense of Jacksonville and all their capabilities. The distraction with Le'Veon Bell and the questions that were asked him and the way that he responded to it and going all over social media and him doing his rap thing and whether or not he's going to sign with the team next year, retire or hold out and all this stuff. And I'm not saying that it's solely on one guy. There were a lot of elements to this game, and you have to give credit to Jacksonville because there were a lot of teams, especially with players that have little to no playoff experience outside of a couple of guys for that team in the playoffs. They handle themselves really well. And you're going to have to give credit to Jacksonville whether you want to or not. And whether you want to say it's going to be an easy game for New England, I think that we're all going to have to think very closely again about how good that football game may be coming up this weekend in the AFC Championship game. As far as Ben Roethlisberger goes and Le'Veon Bell goes, are they going to retire? That's really for them to decide. I'm not going to speculate, nor am I going to say what anybody should do with their career. But I will say this. Those are two incredibly big pieces to the puzzle for the Pittsburgh Steelers in order to be able to keep winning football games. And I think that if you keep them around for just a little bit longer, at least two of the elements, and Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown, you could be okay. But Ben Roethlisberger, to me, though, is still the clear-cut leader in that locker room. And even if they miss a piece like Le'Veon Bell, I think you could still see this team do very well. Because remember, Le'Veon Bell held out to September 4th last year, and when he first came back, wasn't playing the greatest football. Gave himself a little bit too long of a layoff, and I don't think the Steelers would be willing to deal with that holdout once again. Remember, I alluded to it in my last commentary about this with Brett Favre and the Green Bay Packers. Eventually, it was Aaron Rodgers is our guy. We're going to be moving forward. This is the Full Court Press. I am Drew Duncan. I am on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at Drew Duncan 83. We've got a lot more to get to. Obviously, we're going to be talking about Minnesota and New Orleans in the wild finish, but there's a lot to get to in that game as well. Don't you dare touch that dial.